Welcome back to iHeartRadio So Bad It's Good. Today, I couldn't be more excited to have our next two guests on. Now, we talk about reality shows and pop culture, and we also talk about how the sausage is made, and that is sometimes dealing with the after effects of not just how these shows are produced, but what we see in the immediate aftermath of that. It doesn't just end with what we see on this magical edited show that is supposed to be about love or fame or wealth or any of those things. It goes so much deeper, and our next two guests can really speak to that, and I think they're really doing something so positive for reality shows in general. And of course, this has been coming up a lot more recently. Of course, we've been talking about Bethany Frankel, and I have my own opinions on that, but this is a little different than that. Now, they both come from the hugely popular show on Netflix, Love is Blind. Now, I've watched and enjoyed both seasons of this show. I've always had questions of how the heck could this possibly be made? How would you even be able to find love on this? Well, our next two guests could answer a little bit about this, but I also want to say before I introduce them separately, they've started something that I think is so amazing, and that's the UCAN Foundation. It's a network of reality TV participants and mental health and legal experts dedicated to supporting cast members. Their goal is to provide cast members with resources to make informed decisions, understand the reality of productions, and seek help in a safe and supportive environment. So, our guest today, Jeremy Hartwell, you might know from a very little bit of Love is Blind season 2, because he did not get to the place where he had made a connection to get fully engulfed in the season itself. But then Nick Thompson, you will be more familiar with. Now, I just was listening to his podcast earlier, which I recommend, Eyes Wide Open with Nick Thompson. But they both founded this UCAN Foundation. Now, Nick, you remember, got married to Danielle Rule in the show, and they have since split up but remain on good terms. But I'm so excited to talk to them. So that's a 5-minute introduction. Nick Thompson and Jeremy Hartwell, welcome to the show.
Hey, Ryan. Thanks for having us on. It's really
Thanks
cool
so much for having us, Ryan.
Okay, and just so everybody, if they're hearing the voices, Nick, you say hello.
Hello.
Okay, that's Nick's hello. That's Nick's voice. And what is a Jeremy voice?
This would be a Jeremy voice.
That's a Jeremy voice. Okay, we got that out of the way. First off, you guys, Nick especially, has been in the news. You might have just read about him a week ago, because there was this Daily Mail interview, or that's where I saw it, where he came out with some startling revelations that I wasn't completely aware of, that broke down that when all things were said and done, you guys, or Nick, was making less than minimum wage, like $7.14 an hour in terms of the work itself, but also that certain moments on this show, there were really bad conditions in terms of psychological and mental abuse that some of these contestants go through, and no services were provided. Is that correct, Nick?
Yeah, that is correct. It's a extremely treacherous and takes a huge toll on your mental health and your physical health. While you're in the pods and then consequently in Mexico for a total of 3 weeks, you're being recorded 18 to 20 hours a day. You're being locked in your hotel room for days at a time, being isolated without any food, without any water, without your ID, without your credit cards, without your passport. You're literally held prisoner during that time and not allowed to really have access to anything outside of that hotel room or outside of that Love is Blind set.
I was watching this amazing YouTube video that you guys did or were a part of, where you were explaining more about these conditions. And I think the fallacy of reality shows, and maybe even so when you wanted to get on them in the first place, is that, wow, this is amazing. I could find love. Also, this is pretty cool to be on a television show. Jeremy, what are those thoughts going through your head when you actually sign up to do a show like this in the first place?
Yeah, I think it's pretty similar to that. And me personally, I didn't watch a lot of reality TV going into this. And one of the interesting things that actually isn't a surprise in the larger picture is most of the cast members, myself included, who made it to the show didn't reach out, right? They found us. And for me in particular, they found me on a dating app, which I guess kind of makes sense given the overall perspective there. But
well, they found me on LinkedIn, so
you're saying the production company is actively searching on dating apps, LinkedIn, all of these things to find contestants. So, Jeremy, in your case, you didn't search out them; they searched out you.
No, I mean, I've never had an interest on going on reality TV, but I've built up a philosophy of personal self-development, of challenging myself, of doing things that scare me and that are new and interesting. And in my mind, when someone reached out to me and offered me this opportunity, that's what it was, right? It was an ability to try something new that was so far outside of my comfort zone, right? The notion of being in front of a camera was insane to me, and it was terrifying. And to me, that was enough of a reason to say, yeah, I'll give this a shot. But even then, I never really thought I would be actually cast, right? Because for me in particular, and I know this varied, my casting process was over a year long, and COVID got in the way of some of that. But what's going through your head, and what went through my head, I guess, I can't speak for other people, but it was more or less what you said. It's okay. Here's the show. I'm gonna just put myself out there. I will be the person I know I am, and I understand that reality TV is not literally just a camera following you around. There's going to be some edits, but as long as I portray myself in the way who I am, who I know I am, it'll be fine. And maybe I find love, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll make some great friends with the guys in the lounge, which actually was true. It's just running through the possible scenarios. I always interpreted through a lens of good actors, like not literal actors, but like good actors on the production side who weren't actively trying to manipulate, or who weren't, I'm not going to say deliberately trying to cause harm, but who weren't totally just negligent around the damage they caused to get the storylines they wanted, right? That never entered my mind when I considered this, right? My worst case scenario was I'm off the show early, and I had some stories to tell, and I enriched my life experience.
Yeah, I mean, and Nick, you could probably speak a little bit more to this, because Jeremy, your piece of this ended, I believe like a week in or something, and you didn't get to go to the next level.
It felt like a month at times, but yeah.
That's you guys make that point of saying when you are desensitized to your environment, you don't have your phone, you don't have a little time feels like a very long time when you aren't used to actually living in a normal living environment. But Nick, you made it through the entire thing, and we saw your journey of emotionally falling in love with somebody and then taking that out into the real world, or what they perceive to be the real world. And even watching your ex at the time go through something very mentally hard, and being kept for 3 hours away from when all of the other couples were meeting. And I was watching that one scene where they said, hey, she's not oh my God! Is it connect? Is it there? Are they after you? Sorry.
Those are my dogs. I just muted myself. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. I was like, no, but I'll take that part out. Nick, you went through a whole different level on top of that, where I feel like your emotional aspect of it was even so much deeper the longer you stayed into that. At what moment did you realize this was getting a little more than what you had signed up for?
So that's a really good question. And it is, I've described it before as a pressure cooker, right? Every single day you're making these life altering decisions. Am I going to fall for someone? Am I going to get engaged to someone? Are they going to say yes? What's it going to be like when I see them for the first time? What's it going to be like separated from them after 25 minutes for a few days until you see them again? What if the physical connection isn't there? What if the look, like what if you're not attracted to each other?
Yeah.
There's all these things that go on in the entire process. What if the family doesn't like me? What if the friends don't like me? How am I going to, after 3 weeks, get back into my job and my normal life? And what is my family going to think of her? What are my friends going to think of her? These are all the things that you're constantly, running through your mind. And it's such a go pressure cooker environment that I actually didn't realize how messed up everything really was until last year at the end of the year, because it just snowballs. It just goes on and on and on. And so, I always looked back and I was like, okay, I found Danielle. So, I'm going to focus on that. And
yeah.
I honestly feel, my therapist says this too, that I repressed all of this. And I just never took time to process it. And then, after my divorce got leaked to TMZ, there were some negative things said about me publicly. I lost my job a few days after that. I was at rock bottom at the end of last year. And I was like, I'm done with this. I don't want to do this anymore. So it was very, very, very long time for me to like be able to look back and be like, okay, that was messed up. That was messed up. That was messed up. Not getting support was messed up. No one from Netflix or Kinetic, who's making millions of dollars partially off of my love story, is reaching out to me after I lose my job and get, defamed in the media. So it's like, they don't care. And I had some of these thoughts before, but it's like an abusive relationship. It's like after you're done filming, right? You don't hear from them until they're back and they're like, okay, the show's coming out in a couple months or a month or whatever that ends up being. And then it's like they're your best friends again. And then they're not.
You're telling me corporations are more out for themselves. That is shocking information to find out. But Nick, to your point, you were saying like all of those things of like when you're dating somebody, you're nervous to meet the family, you're nervous, and then to throw cameras on top of that, and then to allow that in your head of, oh my God, how many people are going to see this? What seems like a potential good idea. And as Jeremy said, oh, this will be an interesting experience that I can add to my experiences, becomes something so much more different that in that moment, when you are signing something, you can't really imagine the road that you're about to go down. And I want to point out to the audience, Jeremy and Nick, I mean, these are well-educated, these people are like, have had really good jobs, smart guys that have put themselves in this situation without knowing the scope of that. And what I love about what you're doing from this is like, okay, this has happened. How do we improve these conditions? How do we actually make people aware? Because and Jeremy, if I'm not mistaken, it's not scorched earth here where we do not want reality shows to exist. We want to have better working conditions. Is that right, Jeremy?
100%. And I would go even farther, Ryan. And my perspective is, again, I'll reaffirm, we're not trying to kill reality TV. We're just trying to ensure that it's produced in an ethical way that doesn't cause like permanent harm to individuals repeatedly over like thousands of individuals. And I think, last estimate, 40-ish people have committed suicide after reality TV, right? There's something really bad going on. So we're not trying to kill it. We're just trying to make it so you're not destroying people's lives. But I would go even further. We would welcome the collaboration of these production companies and these distribution companies to work with us towards creating a better future and a better system that incentivizes the right behaviors that protects people. And in fact, even before I filed the lawsuit, I didn't want to file a lawsuit. That's a pain in the ass. Sorry, I don't know.
Because it is. You filed last April a lawsuit, correct?
I did, yeah. I think it was around June, but yeah, last summer I filed a lawsuit around labor law violations or alleging labor law violations in California. But like, I didn't want to file that. That's a hassle. That's a lot for very like. If you think just monetarily, I'm not going to get much from that, most likely, right? But it's one of those things where I tried reaching out to them like personally. Like I tried to get in contact with their lawyers. I tried to get in contact with someone because again, I have this experience where I've been in senior leadership roles in large corporations and I've talked to these type of individuals before. So my perspective was, hey, and I again, naively after this experience, I still thought that this was a mistake, right? That this wasn't part of the process. And so I wanted to reach out to them and just say, hey, like I would love a formal apology because like the way you treated me in particular, my experience was terrible and it had an awful impact. But two, I just wanted them to like work with us, to work with me, to be like, hey, let me help you like make this a like not so destructive. Like, what can we do? And they like, I'll quote their chief legal counsel, F off is literally what he said at the end of that call when I finally got a hold of him. So
I'm not sure which law book that's in, but that's wow, that's amazing.
It's a legal term of art of like, we don't care. Yeah, it's
what I think is hilarious about that is I feel like this is Jeremy's Karen moment where he's like, I need to speak to your manager.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, no, I mean, it truly is that moment, and it's wild. And Nick, you pointed this out before. You've said, well, a lot of people online, everybody has their opinions. They say, hey, you guys know what you signed up for. You were just out for fame. You were just out for money. Can you speak to that? Because I know how the internet works and it's sometimes not a positive place. What is your experience with that and how do you answer to those claims sometimes?
I've talked a lot about the you signed up for this. Like, I signed up for a psychologically based love experiment where I was going to try and fall in love with someone behind a wall. And I was going to maybe go all the way, or I was maybe going to go home after a couple days. And I was fine with either of that. The other thing I signed up for was to give my phone away for 3 weeks. I did not sign up to not be given food and water at my discretion. I did not sign up to get locked away in a hotel room for days at a time without any ID, money, access to anything. I did not sign up to be sent into a room where my fiance just had a panic attack without any information and without any mental health support and told to film anyway. So I had not signed up to be, basically on the, I don't even know how to say this. Maybe this is the part you edit out.
No, I mean, it's all completely making sense, but then I think it even makes it more aware that you are in this fishbowl and like, oh my God, what did I sign up for? On top of you are falling in love or have fallen in love with this person. I mean, those are really extreme environments.
Yeah, and that's why I say it's just one pressure cooker after another. And the funny thing is, like, I'm naive. I didn't really watch a lot of reality TV. I only watched Love is Blind because they reached out to me on LinkedIn about casting. And I thought it was genuine. And I thought the people on there were, by and large, there for the right reasons. And what is the right reason, right? So I guess that's a question you can always have now. But I felt like they were there to see if they could find love in that experiment. So totally had very little idea of what was happening in the reality show experience. And much like Jeremy said, I just felt if I was myself, I'd be okay because I don't say or do anything out of character. And what really gets me about the you signed up for it, no, I didn't, for the reasons I stated, but also you can't sign away your legally protected rights of being an American citizen in this case, right? Like, defamation is illegal. We have laws about that, right? Discussing your workplace, that's allowed by the National Labor Relations Board, right? You're protected by, the National Labor Relations Act. You're protected.
With whistleblower protections.
Yeah, with whistleblower protections when you're an employee. Now, they scoot around and have all of these ways to not declare you a worker, but that's the reality. I also did not sign up to film 18 to 20 hours a day. Only getting a break, which you're still mic'd, so they're still collecting sound, only to get a break when the union crew that filmed us from the morning up until I think the evening, but you don't know what day it is or time it is. And then they swap them out for what we would be doing is nighttime dating for another crew because they didn't want to have to pay them the overtime. So it was just incredibly exploitative. And then I also didn't sign up to have complete control over everything I do, everything I talk about, everything I say for that, especially that 3 week period right there.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, Jeremy.
I want to really hammer home an example, like a really tangible example of that for listeners, right? And Nick touched upon it a little bit, but we knew they would, and this is the perfect example, and because it's an archetype for everything they did to us, right? We knew our phones would be taken away. That was communicated to us, right? We signed up for that. Yes. The answer to that is yes. When they came around to take away our phones, they also took our IDs, our passports, our wallets, our credit cards, like every form
You're
of
criminals.
And
you're criminals.
So, but here there was never an indication that was going to happen, right? And so, like, that was never communicated to us. And then they did it. And by the time it happened, it was too late. Like, imagine if Nick or I had run out of that, that set when that happened and said, "Hey, police, I'm being kidnapped by a reality TV company. I don't have any ID or any currency, but trust me." It's insane. And I think, like, listeners, like, really, really think about that for a second. When the notion of they signed up for it crossed your mind, just think of that one example, which is tangible. There's no like gray area there, but then extrapolate that out to everything, because that's exactly how it worked. The stuff we signed up for made up about 5 to 10% of the stuff that actually happened, right?
No,
everything else that.
Sorry, no, I mean, this is just, can you speak to like the crew itself watching you go through these, Jeremy, in your first week and Nick the entire time? Are they like sheepish? Are they like, sorry, I know. I mean, are they like very stern with you? I'm trying to imagine and have the audience imagine like because I'm sure you're going to them with these complaints, or as you're learning to be able to speak up for yourself, what is their reactions as you're saying like, are you kidding me? Because Nick said he had to get water out of the sink in the hotel room because they didn't provide water.
Yeah, so that's it's a mix of all of that. So there's like the subtle things that are sort of planted in your brain before you get there. Like if you leave without a producer's permission, you are subject to $50,000 in damages. So there's things like that are kind of planted in your head. You're told you can't tell anyone, right? So like you're just put in this situation where like you can't tell you're not supposed to tell your friends, your family that you're in the casting process. Everything's super secretive. So it's kind of like you're already sort of self-censoring by the time you get there, that you just kind of continue to do that. And sure, it'd be like, oh yeah, no problem, I'll get you some water. Water never comes. Oh sure, like I'm gluten-free. They knew all this. Impossible to provide me any food that I could eat for a lot of that time. So it was, things like that where they just kind of subtly do it, or they say, yeah, sure. Or, after this, you'll be able to do this and stuff like that. And it's just not really always true. In fact, it's probably true maybe 10% of the time. I will say too, the executive producer came in Mexico and she apologized to, I can't even remember if it was, I think it was everyone when we were all together at some point. And they apologized for the complaints that we had made about not being able to get food and water, especially when we were in the hotels, when it was the morning or when we were isolating for whatever reasons that they had us stay in there for days at a time. And they apologized like, oh, we're not that kind of production. We're not that kind of, show. And, this is just a slip up and this is a blip in the radar and we're so sorry. And it's like, okay. So then you hear that and you're like, okay, so people have other things to do than get me water. Okay. I get that. So you just kind of like get yourself in that mindset. Yeah. And I don't think it's all nefarious. I'm sure there are times where someone forgot that, the 50 things they were doing that someone had asked for water, but I definitely have heard horror stories from other producers on these shows that say things like I had to intercept people's water or beverage requests with alcohol. Or there was a associate producer that was on Danielle and my team, and she ended up quitting partially because of how they were treating us, and partially because of some racism, I guess, within this situation. So to me, it's just like this is a systemic issue. And then I've talked to 40, 50 reality cast members across the board, cooking shows, dating shows, Love is Blind, Bachelor, Bachelorette, all of it. And they all have the same stories. So it is a systemic issue.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that I'm sure you guys have heard so many more stories now that you've started this, but also I know you can speak to only your experiences, but even on set, were there whispers between the other cast members of like, what's going on here? Like, this is a little weird on all of our accounts, or was it kind of like, we're mic'd up, we cannot talk in this moment at all?
So we would definitely bring up some of those conversations too. There's even a scene in the More Perfect Union video from Love is Blind where Kyle is making a joke that there's 3 blueberries and we're all going to have to fight for them. So that was kind of the subtlety of the comments. And I know when we were back at the hotel, I actually roomed next to Kyle and Sal, but we were terrified to even go in the hallway and talk to each other because you're not supposed to, because they want to get it all on camera. And I remember we would sit out there and talk about how this is like kind of messed up. But again, you just don't know you're in the abusive relationship until you're out of the abusive relationship.
Yeah. And Jeremy, what were you about to say?
I was going to say, I want to bring that up to a bit of a higher level from a psychology standpoint. And they definitely employed like tactics that could be taken straight out of the Milgram experiment or the Stanford prison experiment, where it was very heavy authoritarianism. And I think especially at the beginning, the orientation, when they took our phones and our wallets, that was like looking back on that felt almost fascist to me in the way that they like created that environment of like, don't talk to each other, shut up, like just very terse conversations. And we're telling you what to do and you have to do it or else. Right. And there was even our cast wrangler, who was like an outside contractor, I guess. He was a big, imposing guy who constantly talked about how he was an ex-UFC fighter. He runs a UFC gym, and he would every single chance he got, he would tell stories about how he had to physically choke out cast members who get out of line. And he hopes he doesn't have to do that with us. Like, I am not exaggerating, right? But then as Nick said, there's the good cop thing where like someone will come in and be like, oh, we're so sorry. Like, we don't, we're just super busy. Like, we don't need to do this.
And you don't know how TV's made. You've never been on a TV show.
New.
So this could be completely normal for every set for all you know at that time.
But it's psychology too. Like you're in the middle of this. You don't know what to do. You're going along with the group think. Your buttons are being pushed to be malleable and just go along with it and not question it. And you also don't feel like you have a choice, right? So what are you going to do? Are you going to complain about it, or are you just going to like soldier on? And
there's also this. Hold on, just because I don't want to get off that. There's also this whole thing. I think Jeremy, you would even agree to this, that there's this whole "we're doing you a favor" vibe. We're going to help you find love. We're going to help you make X amount of dollars. We're going to help you get all this exposure. And it's like, you can't sell me
part of the Netflix family now.
That's my favorite. You're part of the Netflix family. And I never heard from them after my divorce. So,
well, I mean, God, this is, and I just want to point out, Kinetic Content, you guys, just so this isn't their first like trip into the rodeo here with Love is Blind. They do Married at First Sight. They do The Ultimatum. They do Perfect Match, Claim to Fame, Love Without Borders. I mean, they are just littered with reality shows. So this is not their first show that they've been a part of. They're a very successful production company that should have a way of operating, which I think this is. I mean, I love the meta look at this of the reality behind the reality. The other thing that I wanted to introduce to you guys and get your opinions on is that a lot of reality show viewers will watch this, and a lot of us just take it whatever we see as fact, and a lot of us then will kind of think, okay, why are they doing these shows? Especially with The Bachelor, I've noticed through the seasons where it's like, okay, are they on here for love, or are they on here because they want the Instagram followers? And you see that. And then, like you said, the Netflix family, I remember the first season of Love is Blind, there was a bunch of cast members that I think got thrown into other shows of Netflix's, and they made like, they were at Craig's trying to get photographed on TMZ. And it was like, oh, I think they want the stardom of this. Are you guys, is that part of not the allure, but is that part of the promises too, when they're talking about, oh, you'll make a lot of money on Instagram, you guys, you'll make a lot of money at this? Is that a part of this conversation when they're trying to get you to do these shows?
It is. It's very subtle. But I will say, I think what happened with Love is Blind, and it happens with any show, right? The more popular it gets, the more people that watch it, the more eyes it attracts of people who maybe want to clout chase. Or who want that fame. And that's totally fine. I think people, you can do what you want to do, make the decision you want to make, but I think you should be transparent in a show like Love is Blind. But there were conversations going on in the pods where it was, oh, I've got to lock someone down because I got to get to Mexico. The further you get money. Those kind of conversations were happening on season 2. And I think that's because the first season just exploded in popularity, having come out right around the time everyone got locked down from the pandemic. So I would imagine, I don't know, I've spoken to a few people from the last couple seasons, but I would imagine that's only growing. And there was literally someone I spoke to in North Carolina who was filming a few months ago when they were doing Love is Blind North Carolina, and literally was like, I don't have any interest in getting married. I'm just kind of going on to see what this is like. And it's like, and that's what I tell people when they ask, because I will talk to people as they're going through the casting process and give just my experience. I don't tell them what to do. It's not my place. But, I say, I'm like, imagine if you go there for, your right reasons, which is I want to find love and see if this works. And then you get all the way to the altar with someone pretending that that's what they want for clout. And then they say no to you, and you're left there all alone on global television in your wedding dress, devastated. Or what if they say yes, and you're married to someone who's saying yes because they think that's going to be better for their brand or their image? And I'm like, do I think that nefarious of thoughts going into it? I have no idea. But does it sound completely impossible? I don't think so. So I think you've really got to evaluate not just why you're going on there, but why other people would be going on there, because you just don't know anymore.
Yeah. we've seen this happen time and time again. And I know you don't watch a lot of reality television, you guys, but I feel like even with Housewives, it's become more, it used to be almost a documentarian view of ladies or this or that. And now it's turned into everything Survivor. It's like, how do I get to the end? How everything is some sort of competition based. And I know Love is Blind is different because it is this psychological experiment, but everything seems to be, the viewer almost questions now everybody's desires to be on this because of fame. But I love the message also. You guys are like, hey man, this is the fame. This is this is it. Like Nick, you in your interview, you said, sometimes you feel like you might even be unemployable at this time, that it is hard for you to even get work, which shocks me. I mean, have you guys both?
And I didn't even get a bad edit. I
loved you. Like I loved your story. I like my heart was, you were one of the people that kept me in it. Like that made me believe that
I don't hear that very often. Thank you.
Well, no, I was like, I don't know. There's something about that. I think the camera can pick up some sort of like eternal truth behind your eyes. And I was like, this guy, I think really is in this. And I thought she was really in this. And so those are the things that keep me on these shows, or people that are actually showing their reality. So I believe that, but you guys have both experienced, like when you go out there in the real world now, is it sort of you're meant to feel shamed about this?
So from my perspective, and I've said my piece that whole difficulty getting work thing was one line in a 30-minute interview that just the media used.
It's a good line.
Absolutely crazy. And then like I get on Entertainment Tonight, pretty much within like I think Sarah was able to give me an hour, maybe an hour and a half notice. This stuff in there, it's like, so like getting my name. Just making all the issues that I'm trying to bring to light to help other people, and they make it about me to polarize people. And then, half of the people feel, empathy or sympathy or compassion towards me. And then the other half are like, go get a construction job. Like, do you want me to build your house? I've never built anything construction wise. That's not my skill set. That's not my expertise. Like, I'm a marketing executive in software. That's what I've, my whole career progression's been that. So, it's just like you have that stuff. And so it makes it difficult, when people know, or I have been told, which people seem to know my experience better than me, but I've been told like, hey, like, we like you. You have the skill set, you have the experience. The headlines make us nervous. We're too small to risk it, and if another bad headline comes out, or you get smeared in the media, or somebody misrepresents you, or whatever that is, like they don't want to risk their company. And again, part of my role in marketing, product marketing, is being the face of these software companies to analysts, to customers, to evangelize the offering. So it's not like I can just go sit in an office with that type of role and then never have to see or talk to anyone and just kind of retreat, which would be lovely if I could do that. But with my expertise, like I have to do interviews, I have to go speak with analysts, I talk to customers, I have to train the sales reps. Like all of that stuff comes from me and my department. So it isn't as easy as just going back to an office job, or any other working class job where you're not in the public eye.
Well, I'm glad to be able that you're here and to be able to have a longer conversation where we can demystify some of these things. Jeremy, how did you guys, I know you met obviously on Love is Blind, but how did you start the conversation of what if we joined forces and started UCAN? Like, how does this happen?
It happened with me mentioning it at Nick's birthday party last year and him telling me, good luck, have fun with that. But it's
happy birthday.
Yeah.
I believe I told you, I was thinking about this. I believe I told you they will crush you before you even get off the ground or something to that extent.
Yeah. And I think it's a really good question, Ryan. And I want to tie it back to the previous question you asked about how it's impacted work. And I think there's a different perspective there because nobody recognizes me in the street, right? Very few people realize I'm associated with Love is Blind as a cast member, but it affected my work in a different way in that it just totally, the experience, and I had a particularly intense, sharp, traumatic event very quickly, ramped up very quickly, right? So where a lot of people, the trauma built up slowly over 6 weeks, I experienced my opinion is it was manufactured and manipulated to do this, but it was an extremely traumatic event in a very short amount of time that caused, my therapist literally said it put me in a, basically what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like comatose state.
A fugue state?
A fugue state. Yeah. But what that did to me is after I recovered from that, it took 4 days of being back at home to not feel like a total zombie again. But it changed my entire personality, because I had to reconcile the fact that, like, I was so easily manipulated and so easily pushed into things against my will and against my own best interest. And we tend to think of ourselves as having free will, autonomy. We can generally direct our own like thoughts and actions. And then realizing that that was not the case, it threw my entire worldview into like just out the window. And so I had to reassess who I actually was, what I was doing. And it absolutely affected my job performance. And I had a great job at the time. I was a director at strategy at a mortgage company, reporting directly to the C-suite, and I had a good reputation there. And I was continuing that work, but I couldn't do it. Like I found I totally lost my motivation for it. And I left on my own accord. Right. But for better or for worse, this experience changed me entirely. And I could not get the need to have justice and the need to change this industry for the better out of my being anymore. And so it absolutely impacted my ability to work on anything else. And it was absolutely a result of what happened to me. I think, you could frame that in a positive or a negative way, but even without
people don't worry.
People need to realize, for every one reality TV member, like Nick, there are dozens, if not more, that you've never heard of. And they've gone through the same experience and they come out of this with basically nothing, and it affects them, but the trauma affects them in the same way. So we're here for everybody. And, that's sort of a lead in is now, I mean, this is who I am is this fight. Right. And so it's this fight to change the industry and this fight to support cast members and this fight to do the right thing. It's just embedded in my DNA now. And, I was just brainstorming, trying to figure out what's the best way to approach this, because in the end, with my background, the way I look at it is right now, it's more profitable for these companies to produce things in an unethical way than an ethical way, right? At the most reductionist sense, from the lens of the economy we live in, that's what it is, right? So we need to find a way to flip that equation. And there's a lot of different levers you can pull to do that. So it's like, okay, how do we get access to those levers? How do we build a foundation to get there? And it sort of struck me that a nonprofit might be a really good way to go about that for a number of reasons. And so that's when it was after I filed the lawsuit that this idea started germinating in my head. And that's when I told Nick about it. And again, he was reluctant at first for very good reasons.
It was his birthday. Come on.
Yeah. Well, but we wound up here, and he ended up going all in, and we wouldn't be here without him. So.
And just so you guys know, UCAN have an unscripted cast advocacy network. And what really struck me when I started researching this was that, you guys are the executive directors of this, but then you have a mental health support director, Dr. Isabel Morley. And I love the emphasis I'm such a big proponent of mental health and not to shy away from that, even in your life, away from cameras or even on cameras. And Nick, you were speaking about this, just in terms of your ex, is that when you're going through these highly emotional on camera, when your heart is involved, there should be an industry professional, a mental health industry professional on hand at all times. I mean, I think that's just a no-brainer. And it's something that I think could easily be fixed. And I don't think it takes away a lot from the show. I know they want to put you guys in pressure cookers, and I know that's very entertaining, but we also, I think the audience isn't heartless in the sense that we want people at the end of the day to be all right. Like I don't want anybody.
I'm not so sure.
Yeah. Well, I personally, not Nick. I don't want Nick to be all right, but I want but I know what you're saying. Like it is kind of a WWE World Wrestling kind of environment, but at the same time, that is something that I think is such an easy fix. It's like, well, why shouldn't there be industry professionals on hand, especially if you are doing a psychological experiment? Psychological implies that you would have industry professionals on hand as part of your experiment. Wouldn't that be the case?
I agree completely. And first of all, the WWE reference I think is great because I actually recorded a reel. I got to post this one of these days where I'm actually comparing reality TV to WWE, where WWE, you know, it's loosely scripted. People are kind of amplified versions of themselves. The outcome's predetermined, but it's not a sport. So you can't bet on it, for example. At least I know they're lobbying.
Not yet. Yeah.
So like, if you think of it in the same way, that's why it's WWE World Wrestling Entertainment. So maybe it's like, instead of reality TV, it's like reality entertainment. Think of it that way. Like you're seeing a dramatized version of what is real. And people are in manufactured situations that, I think back because I had a whole like session with my therapist about why people from the show were like rent free in my brain. And, I realized like I had such a nice close knit group of friends that like being sort of in a situation with people that I may not be friends with in real life, but have to constantly interact with, where you would put up a boundary and say, no, I'm not going to be friends with that person. I'm only going to be acquaintances with that person or whatever. You're forced sort of in that. But to come back to that, I believe that we do need a mental health professional. I believe we need them to be independent of the production company, even if the production company has to pay for it. And the way I think of this, and I've explained this, a few times, and I hope it makes sense, but you have the NFL, right? They recently, in the last agreement, have an independent neurologist on each team
for CTE.
Yes, for concussion evaluation. Because if it's the Super Bowl and you've got Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, and he gets a concussion and it's the Super Bowl and the team doctors and coaches are like, well, we really want to win the Super Bowl. Like he's fine. Right. But an independent neurologist now has to clear him to say he's okay to go play. He does not have a concussion. And that's kind of how I'm viewing this. We need independent mental health professionals on set that have the power to say, hey, Nick's done filming today, or Nick, it needs to do XYZ before he's going to be filming again. And I think that kind of thing would just help instantly with people's mental health and feeling like they had someone there that they could trust that actually had their best interest at heart.
Yeah, I mean, it seems at times like a no-brainer on this count. I am shocked, and you're just to clarify too. You had mentioned this, but both of you guys, after you're done filming, at no point are you being reached out to of like, how are you mentally? We do provide 6 sessions with like a BetterHelp therapist. There was none of this conversation happening because they had already filmed one season and they see how this can actually go. There was no conversation.
So they claim in the contract, and I forget how much it is. I think they will pay for therapy up to $5,000. I think that's what it was.
It's couples therapy though. Like I don't think they were offering any individual therapy. So only for the married, only totally for the married couples. And I think it was only if you were having difficulties in contemplating divorce. Like there were all these conditions around it.
And I was asking for it because we couldn't afford it. We couldn't find one that was open to taking new clients or new couples. So we were just like, I don't care about the money. Help us find someone that has time for us. And nothing. It all fell on deaf ears. What they do have is they have a mental health professional that does do, quote, check-ins throughout this process, but it's a phone call and it is so clearly checking a box. It got to the point where I know, I was just like, I'm fine. Or the one time I said, I'm not, my relationship is in trouble and we can't find help. And they're like, okay, well, let us know if you need anything. And it's like, okay, cool.
Wow.
So it's just a hostile, ancient labor practices. It just reminds me of like child labor where children are being worked to death and people are just being exploited for excessive amounts of money at the expense of their own mental and emotional wellness and physical.
Well, if they truly wanted you a part of the Netflix or the kind of family, they would make sure you are at your best working condition so you could actually keep being a part of the family and be able to be on other shows. And we want you at your best. But I know sometimes that's not the reality of reality shows, is that sometimes they want to highlight the biggest mess. And sometimes, so many conversations come up because of this. And I think it's fascinating. And just to be honest with you guys, I've been talking about Bethany Frankel a lot because She has been really out there lately. And I have to say, sometimes it's not that I'm in disagreements, but sometimes I think it's so important, the person that is actually speaking for these people. And sometimes, just to be honest, I've not, just knowing Bethany from reality television itself, you don't sometimes get like the purest. I'm like, oh, I don't really know if she's working from this really place of concern for everybody. And it feels like sometimes just scorched earth and anger. But also it comes from a financial aspect. Can you guys speak to financial aspect in terms of what you guys would like to see? And, is that your primary focus is the mental health, but also money does have to be a concern for this. If Nick, you're saying you're making less than a minimum wage once the day is done.
Yeah. So I think the work that Bethany has done and highlighting the fact that reality cast members are the redheaded stepchild. Hollywood doesn't take us seriously. People can stream our content and we're given no residuals. The message that she's bringing, that's all part of it, but that's not all of it. And so I think, I think her voice is really important. I'm not going to question her intentions. That's not my place to do. I just think that if we are going to get a collective bargaining, whether that's through legislation, whether that's through unionizing, whether that's through negotiating change through a strike, however this looks, I think it's very important that we all do this together. There is no use in us having a bunch of different things that pop up that try to get something done. When we have the UCAN Foundation, we're already taking steps to legally take stands, obviously through the lawsuits and then some other things that are going on behind the scenes I can't speak about right now. But we've been working with SAG. We've been talking with the Teamsters. We've had these important meetings, and they're the ones that know how to get something like this done. So I think
you're working with Screen Actors Guild, you're saying. You're working with, these, and by the way, just I'm going to have this on the show notes, ucanfoundation.org. You can find more information about all of this. It's a really great website to poke around, but you're saying you are actually going in there and trying to work with these unions and Teamsters and things like that, which I think is just such a positive step.
Absolutely. And I think that's I've worked in politics since 2008, like every presidential election.
I'm so sorry, Nick. I'm so sorry.
I know. It's a tiresome game, but I can't help myself.
Wait, are you telling me reality is worse than politics? Is that what you're telling me, Nick? Yeah.
Well, it might be. I've never been in a position.
Are they any different though?
Right.
It's all politics. Yeah. It's all campaigns. One
takeaway I will say is I've noticed the entertainment media is not that different in operational from the mainstream media. So it's it's just like, here's the line, toe the line. Yeah. Here's the propaganda. Here's the clickbait. So I do. Yeah. So there is a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, but what I feel people need to sort of come to terms with is you can have 20 million people, you can have 20,000 people. If you were on an unscripted show, we are all in this together. Maybe you figured out how to grow your following. Maybe you were on a more popular show. Maybe you monetize, whatever that is. And that's great. Good for you. But that doesn't happen for everyone. There's not, no lack of effort. So what I think needs to happen is we all need to coalesce and come together and make it about the collective unscripted casts and not make it about a single person. And I think that's where we're going to actually get things done. And we're going to get real change in the industry that benefits everyone. And then the people that are on more shows, the people that have a bigger following, they're going to continue to make more money. They're going to continue to have their successes, but we're going to do it for the people who are entering into a Love is Blind or a Married at First Sight and have no idea what they're signing up for, and making sure that they're not exploited, making sure they're treated properly. And then, of course, as Bethany talks about all the time, making sure that you're paid. I mean, people can stream Love is Blind season 2 and watch me in my relationship all day, every day if they want to. And, this was the whole conversation about, the job situation. It's like, they're making money on that. There's more seasons partially because of my season. So, do I know what that looks like? No, that's not for me. That's not for me to determine or say. That would be for the collective. But I think we all just have to come together and do this together because we have the power. If it's all of us, if it's one of us, you may get a squeaky wheel here or there, but we're not going to have the organizing power.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, Bethany's been putting out some great stuff, and she's brought a lot of amazing publicity. Like, she's, because of her platform, she's been able to bring attention to this in a way that we cannot, right? And so we very much want, as Nick said, we very much want to work with her on this. And
Yeah,
we're
have
not
you guys
even
reached
saying,
out, or has she reached out to you?
yeah, there's been some initial discussions, but like, I think the bottom line is we're not even saying like it has to be UCAN, right? We're focused on the cause, and we're focused on the mission, and we're focused on the result. Obviously, Nick and I both believe UCAN is the best way to do this, because I've put over a year of like thought into this, behind this, right? Like, we started up in April, but like the machinations and the strategic roadmap and a 5-year, I've been planning this stuff for a very long time. Like, it's not just a spur of the moment kind of thing that came out. So like, there's a lot of strategy behind what's going on in the background here. But ultimately, like, I don't even want the focus to be on UCAN necessarily. If it's not the right place, I want it to be on the cause and on the cast members and on the exploitation and on the outcomes. And, I really think Bethany is probably trying to do the same thing, but her platform necessarily focuses attention on her. So I'm looking forward to her, like, again, continuing to promote this cause on her platform, right? And not just any specific individual needs.
Just don't eat like a seafood crab boil while you're talking about this cause. That's sometimes where Bethany, she was, yeah. Anyway, just joking. So that's all amazing. As we start winding down here a little bit, this has just been so fascinating. What are the next steps? I mean, because I know, you're out there talking to people, you're here, I think this is so good to get the word out. And I want to, once again, all the listeners, this isn't scorched earth. They're not trying to end reality television, but I do want to point out to the audience, just as an example, Love is Blind season 2, they were going to do its first live streaming event for Netflix, and they couldn't do it. I mean, it was so many people trying to watch this one event that it had to be postponed a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I just think that shows you the popularity. And with streaming, you guys, it's different than traditional old like TV media. It's like streaming is a whole different wild, wild west. They do not release streaming numbers a lot of the times. Yeah. They do it very strategically. And speaking as a Screen Actors Guild member that has worked in TV and film, we're striking right now. The Writers Guild is striking, but there's no contracts put in place for streaming. There just isn't. From an actor, from a reality show person, there are no contracts. And that is what part of this that we're all fighting for together. But I just want to point out, like, these shows are wildly popular.
Well, let me put some numbers around that, actually. Yeah. So like, and this is my calculations, right? But it's based on methodology produced by Netflix so they published their revenue allocation for Squid Games, right? So they said, Squid Games, we're allocating X amount of revenue to Squid Games viewership, right? And they also published the hours of viewership for Squid Games, right? So if you use that as an assumption, you can back into the revenue allocation for any show that has published viewer hours, right? And that's obviously assuming that it's a linear relationship there, right? That they're not somehow allocating things differently for Squid Games versus Love is Blind, right? So,
and they actually just released the numbers for Love is Blind a week or so ago too. It's the most watched show.
But you can allocate revenue, and based upon those assumptions, based upon my calculations, this is all, again, based upon the revenue allocation they did for Squid Games and the viewing hours. If you look at the viewing hours for the seasons of Love is Blind, each season, based upon those assumptions, I want to be very clear, based upon those assumptions, each season, Netflix is allocating about $90 million in revenue each season. And so, it goes into your point. I believe we are fully, this cause is fully aligned with SGA and with the writer's strike and with the broader issue in corporate America as well. I think it's just the allocation of wealth, and as people involved in the production of a product or a service, how does that wealth get allocated? And it's not the right allocation right now, and that's why there's so many strikes happening. And the way I look at it is there's this delineation between unscripted versus scripted, right? Which has allowed this schism to occur. It's totally artificial. And it was created solely so that they could take advantage of producing new content during a writer's strike or during a during a SAG strike back in it was in the 80s, I think, or the 90s, and then the early 2000s. That's what
it really started the boom of reality.
But they created this, that label it's semantic, it's artificial. Its sole intention is to avoid these kind of unions. Like, it's time to like get rid of that label. There's no difference. It's all entertainment, right? This whole unscripted, scripted, like the semantical, like dancing they do to get around like paying people correctly or following labor laws, like it's got to end. And so, UCAN is in complete solidarity with the writer strikes and the SAG strikes right now. And we're in full support of that. I'm in full support of that. I know Nick is. And we'd like to see unity, not just with unscripted television, but across the entire entertainment industry. Because in the end, also, our incentives are aligned, if you think of it mechanically or just purely objectively, in the sense of the more reality TV content that can happen during a strike, the less leverage the strikers have, right? So if there's alignment along those lines, all of a sudden you start bringing that leverage back to your cause and to your point. And so it's not just the Bethany Frankels that we want to be organized with. It's everybody in entertainment. We're all in the same boat.
Well, I mean,
and I just want to add, I looked this up. So this is from a couple of weeks ago. So Love is Blind, and this is just because they released streaming, right? So Love is Blind has spent, let me find that real quick, has spent 131 days in the U.S. top 10 over the last 18 months, which is more than any other original show. Nielsen notes that 2022 closed out with 13.1 billion minutes viewed, more than any other unscripted series on any platform, digital or linear. More people are watching Love is Blind than any other reality show.
Yeah, so you guys think about Bravo, you think about TLC, you think about all this. Netflix puts all that to shame. I mean, people don't realize what a juggernaut these streaming shows really are, because it's truly, truly wild. So I think this conversation is so important to be had. And this is I want to be talking about your experiences on reality television. I mean, like, listen, we want this to be all worked out so we can get back to talking about the things that we love and the interpersonal relationships. Yeah. You guys, I couldn't thank you enough for your time today, and I wish I could keep talking to you forever. Even though I'm sure that would be horrible for you. Real quick though, just really quick, Nick though, and I'm not has this has got to affected how you date in the future too, and for both of you guys essentially. I mean, is it very hard for you at this point? Because I mean, we saw your journey, and Jeremy, we didn't get to see nearly enough of yours, but I mean, psychologically, that's got to mess that up too.
I am not dating at all. It's like not even in my
purview,
line of sight at this point. It's I'm busting my butt with this organization. I'm trying to get the word out. I'm trying to organize. I'm trying to find a job. There's like a lot of things going on there. And dating just isn't really something that is on the immediate front for me.
Yeah, I would figure not.
But I can't even imagine thinking about
it. I mean, I was just like, if you're trying to eternal sunshine the whole experience, but it was just, it still was such a great.
My favorite movie.
Right. One of my, just such a beautiful movie. But I always think about that in terms of love on reality shows, of how that actually mentally affects somebody, because you're mentally affected in real life. And then you throw all of our opinions onto it. Like you, Nick, you heard everything from all of us about your relationship. And I can't imagine what that would ever be like. And I want to point out Nick Thompson's podcast, Eyes Wide Open with Nick Thompson, is great. So many good guests. Go check that out. What do we always do for people that like actually are nice enough to come on? We go hit 5 stars immediately on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. That's amazing. And then how do we support UCAN? How do we keep in the know for what's going on for you guys?
Yeah, that's thanks so much for asking. So I think the most important thing right now is just spreading the word. Like, follow us on our Instagram account, UCAN Foundation. Go to our website, and also very importantly, we're a nonprofit and survive off of charitable donations right now. And the donations go towards like real meaningful product and support for the cast members, and for the strategies we talked about public education and industry change. A really good example is we're working with a law firm right now who's drafting a legal memo that's going to be a backstop to cast members to tell them, hey, here's how to interpret a contract. Here are your rights going into a contract. Here's what's not legally enforceable. Here's what's available to you if they threaten you after the fact, right? So, we're paying a law firm to develop that for us to provide to cast members, right? That's one tangible example. And then we want just a resource book broader than that for cast members. So all of this stuff costs money, but on top of that, it's the website and the domain reg. Like there's costs incurred. There's costs, right? Even for a nonprofit. And so what I like to say is if just like 1% of people who viewed reality TV pledged to match their Netflix subscription cost each month to the UCAN Foundation, we could solve this in 6 months. Right.
Well, Jeremy, they keep raising our Netflix subscription. So I mean,
all right. Well, we're gonna cap ours at $15. Right. But it doesn't take much, right? But it does take a lot of people. And
also, we're all on board. Nick Lachey and Vanessa has to go, right? That's the one thing we can all agree. I'm joking.
I feel so bad. I like Nick and Vanessa were very kind, and I feel for them. Like, sure.
No, Vanessa really got it, man. Vanessa really got it after that reunion. But I don't know. You guys really fabulous. I hope you'll stop by at some other point to keep us updated. And if there's anything that you need to get out on my show, you can always just send me an email, and I'm happy to share with you any updates, because this is something that we should be paying attention to, because we want the health of reality shows overall. You guys, we love these things. We want to be assured that these people aren't like going to have to emotionally get help for the rest of their lives, and we want fair working conditions. So Nick Thompson, Jeremy Hartwell, thank you so much for being here, and I hope to talk to you again someday.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having us on.